Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast. I'm Kim Skarupski, looking at a dear friend and colleague, Dr. Mike Barone. Hi, Mike.
Good afternoon. Hi, Kim. It's great to see you.
Dr. Mike Barone and I go back to when he and I worked together in the Office of Faculty Development. He was our Associate Dean for Faculty Educational Development. He was an Associate Professor of Pediatrics. One of these leaders in an institution that everyone loves, admires, so smart, and in addition to being smart, has that wonderful twofer of being truly, authentically kind. But he is now the president and chief executive officer of the American Board of Pediatrics. Could you just kind of start with telling people how your journey took you from Hopkins to where you are now? And then we're going to get into a really cool discussion.
Well, it's so great to be here. And I'm going to make sure my mom listens to that intro too, because I really appreciate the compliments. I was blushing. I'm an academic pediatrician, and you and I met at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and I was a Harriet Lane resident and just really owe a lot to that institution for shaping me in an academic mindset and really immersing me in an environment of inquiry. And then we met when we were in the dean's office working on faculty development together. I was probably at a midpoint in my career then when we met, and I was increasingly becoming interested in how education and in particular assessment programs within education can be used to drive standards and quality. So I had a choice in 2017 to actually move to an assessment organization, NBME, National Board of Medical Examiners, to be the vice president of licensure programs there. And that was a great honor and a great responsibility to oversee the U.S. Medical Licensing Exam Program, which is a large program and a portal, one of two portals in the United States, to become licensed at the state level to practice general medicine. My time at NBME was incredibly enjoyable. My learning curve went from probably a high slope at Hopkins, but maybe flattening out toward a midpoint in my career. And all of a sudden you take a new job and your slope goes up all over again. And that was really invigorating. I did that for 7 years and was anticipating working in board-related work and assessment for many more years. And as a pediatrician and somebody who is very interested in the health and welfare of children, when this job became available, I applied really just to see if I could get closer to pediatrics and think about how we can drive children's health issues and pediatric medical care even further through the process of board certification, which is different than medical licensure in the United States. And I've been in this position now for a little over 6 months.
Again, thanks for being here. Before we started recording, we were talking about different lines of conversation. And could you just start off with helping faculty members who may be listening to this and leaders who are listening to this podcast episode, people like us in our later years who are coaching and mentoring and advocating for early career faculty members, what unique skills or what preparation did academic medicine or academic health provide you in these licensure, board, program, leadership worlds? I mean, how difficult or easy, how did you bridge that connection from academia?
How did it translate?
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, at this point in my career, I'm reflecting on that often. How did I get here? And I think it's natural for all of us as we take on new roles to have enthusiasm and maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome as well. I've always been one who has never thought of academic medicine as better than. I've practiced in the community. In fact, when I finished a chief residency at Hopkins, I went into community practice for 2 years in southeastern Pennsylvania. And I've always seen both of those aspects of medicine, academics or community-based medicine, as equally important. I gravitated to academic medicine just because it fed something a little bit different in me. And in relation to your question, for me, it's really that tripartite mission. So the clinical care, the education and educational program building, and also the research environment. I don't think of myself as a biomedical researcher, but I have been curious about the educational system for decades. And I've done some educational research and also led some educational programs, which naturally in any country allow you to interact with how the system is put together. How is this program accredited? How is this individual deemed certified or licensable? So during my time at Hopkins, I was learning all that while I was teaching residents, teaching students, seeing patients, and doing some research. And I guess I got to the point where I felt that I could make that switch if I wanted to because of all the experience across different elements of the tripartite mission.
When you got to when you stepped out of Baltimore and Hopkins and moved into the National Board of Medical Examiners, what, you spoke earlier about this learning curve. So what did you walk in being like confident, like, oh yeah, I got this? Many of us, when you interview for a job or you look at jobs or you get into a new job, you're like, yeah, I got this. This is easy. And then there are other parts you go, whoa, 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 wait a minute. What?
Yeah.
What, can you remember that balance and what is it? Where's the proportion of like how much you're like, yeah, I got this versus, wait a minute, hang on a second. Got to go back to school about this.
Yeah, I went back to school basically. So walking into an assessment organization, the scope of an organization like NBME, a few things come to mind. One was the size of the operational program. So I had overseen programs of 120 students, parts of a residency program that was about 90 residents. So I was aware of program size in that realm. And even in my role in the larger curriculum at Johns Hopkins, that was roughly about 500 students. When I stepped into the USMLE role at the time, it's changed a little bit now, the USMLE program was administering 135 to 140,000 assessments worldwide per year. So different scope and scale. And what I didn't have a real strong background in was in operational failure and recovery, root cause analysis of operational failure or operational hiccups. And I also am somebody with a measurement science background, but I didn't have the type of rigor that a trained PhD measurement scientist would have. And NBME is known for a point of differentiation in its organization, having incredible international expertise in that area, largely people with psychometrics backgrounds. So working day to day with those individuals was both thrilling, exciting, a big learning experience, and naturally a bit intimidating because we weren't talking about clinical medicine where I had expertise. We were talking about things that they had a lot more expertise than I had. Yeah. Nevertheless, I stayed confident by bringing the skills I could bring to that job.
Fair enough. Thank you. And how did you build trust? And I'm assuming, knowing you're blessed with not having to build trust because you just kind of ooze trust. But for those of us, maybe, or some of us who are a little more challenged in kind of giving off this feeling of trust, or I'm being a little bit facetious, but you go into any environment or new culture, there's naturally going to be this element of, I'm tapping my chin with my pointer finger, like, all right, does she have what it really takes? Does she have the chops? This fancy pants thinks he's going to tell us what to do. Can you talk a little bit about trust and building it or recognizing it or working toward it, nurturing it?
Yeah, I knew it was going to be a challenge during the interview process for that first job at NBME, actually. People were asking me questions where I had the impression that while they respected me and the skills that I brought, they weren't sure that I was competent. And I took that as acceptable. They didn't know me, and there was going to have to be a big, an element of building trust. I did it in my usual way. I think I would do it differently now. So I have a little bit more of a framework for doing it now. But back then, what I did is I acted with curiosity and humility. I made every attempt to demonstrate my competence in the areas I knew I was competent in. And I deferred to expertise. I mean, I didn't have to be an expert in everything. I was leading a program. And over time, I think that helped. Probably could have done better. Now I think of trust in a similar way, but probably a little bit more structured or scaffolded, meaning how can I demonstrate to this person that I share their same values, where we do share the same values? In what ways can I specifically demonstrate my competence and my ability to do the job? And empathy. And even when you can't help someone, if they know that you're listening to them genuinely and authentically, I think that helps to build trust. A very good friend of mine who is a leader in medical education about 2 or 3 years ago gave me The Thin Little Book of Trust. I don't know if you've ever seen this book.
No, it's called
And
The Thin Little Book of Trust.
it's called The Thin Little Book of Trust, and I recommend everybody read it.
All
And
right.
I've since given a number of talks and written a few papers on trust in medical education, uh, both at the systems level and also at the individual level. Um, when this individual gave me a thin little book of trust, I looked at her sort of curiously, saying, "Are we okay?"
Like, why are you
'Cause
giving me this? Why are you
exactly,
giving like
this,
how to not be a mean person? Why are you giving me this
yeah,
book? But that book
right.
never worked for beep beep beep. Never worked
Exactly
for
right. The no
the
beep
no
beep
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 rule.
rule. What am I a beep beep? What?
Yeah. And no, it wasn't implying that there had been a breach of trust in our relationship. In fact, I don't think anything could be more different than that. But it was, hey, this is a good book. Read it, incorporate it. And since then, I've given it to easily a dozen people. It's a couple of hour read at most, or maybe an hour read. And it just allows you to think about building trust in a very structured way. And I've learned a lot from that book.
Oh my gosh, we will definitely link to The Thin Little Book of Trust. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Barone. Love it.
Yeah. It's got to, maybe we'll increase its Amazon sales. And I get no proceeds from the book. I think it's written by somebody named Charles Shelton, if memory serves.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for that reference. Good. All right. So we talked about like how how you valued and were able to capitalize and leverage your training, your curiosity, that love of the tripartite mission in academic health, and parlay that experience into NBME. And now the why. Let's talk. You said I kind of like
Yeah.
maybe noodle around this the why. Um, what made you go here, and what is your why? And if you want to kind of get us going on this topic, 'cause I
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, I, as a student and resident and, junior faculty member, as a physician, and this is not unique to physicians, a lot of us go through the educational program and we just see it as a series of hoops to jump over and tests to take and get certified and promoted to the next level. And I've never really felt that way. I've always felt that an educational program should be as individualized as possible to help that individual demonstrate or develop competency and develop competency. And I ran curricula at Hopkins, small curricula like the pediatrics curricula, and tried to bring that mindset to my laboratory within that space because that was my teaching and learning laboratory. And as I progressed through my career, I really felt that I wanted to be able to do this on a grander scale where you can have more impact. And certainly, state medical licensure was one of those places, which is an opportunity to set a standard for where all physicians must meet to be able to be eligible for state licensure. At the certification level where I'm working now, I'm able to focus on a particular discipline, in my case, pediatrics, and think about how our own work as a certification board and how our collaborative work with the educational programs can help to really drive the types of competencies that patients need. So that's my why. I'm committed to children getting excellent care. And I can do that at the bedside, but I do that in a very dyadic one-on-one way at the bedside. Or I could do that at the entire specialty level where the American Board of Pediatrics, since its existence, has certified almost 150,000 pediatricians, and we have 90,000 active diplomates in a continuing certification program. This is a way to drive, to present to those diplomates a program and an assessment that demonstrates they know the most up-to-date information and the best practices, with our sincere hope and our sincere belief that that translates into the care of children. That's what keeps me awake at night in a good way. How do we do this better? How do we do it? I tell my team here, how do we do it 5% better? How do we do it 1% better? And every time we incrementally can do that in our certification program, it has the potential to drive care at the individual bedside.
When did you know your why? When did you start suspecting that you had interest, skill set, maybe some gift for having an impact, a broader global impact around licensure or certification? Do you remember a moment or a period in your career where you started thinking, I wonder if, like, when did you decide? How did you decide?
My story may be very similar to others. It relates to some people telling me something about me that I didn't notice about myself.
Oh, I love.
Um, yeah, so I'm a good clinician teacher. I'd like to think, well, at one point in my career, I think I was an excellent clinician teacher. My work has changed over the years. And then you become a local educational program leader. And then I had an opportunity to lead a national organization of educators, roughly about 400 members across the United States. And when I got nominated for that position and elected into that position, someone said, you'd be really good doing this on a national stage. And I thought, really? I didn't see that in myself. But when I got that position as a president, which was just an elected position for 2 years, I was able to see something in me that others were seeing. And I was able to begin to enact some changes that really excited me. When that presidency was over, I went back into my regular work, and that's when you and I were meeting. But I was always thinking about, well, what does this doing this on a national stage look like? And that's probably been the last, I don't know, 8 years of my career.
Well, so this is, it's interesting. You're getting to some of this faculty development,
Mm,
coaching, sponsorship, the things that you remember we talked about in our leadership programs, that
yeah.
imposter syndrome kind of stuff. What was it that others saw in you that made you
Mm.
go, huh? Because my suspicion is I've had a couple moments in my career too where people are like, gosh, it was so great. That was so great, Kim. And I would have the kind of wrinkle my nose up and roll my eyes like, it's nothing. And I wasn't being humble. I was literally thinking, anybody can do this. And actually, at the one point, I said,
Interesting.
what is the big deal? Anybody can do this. And I remember then my mentor said to me, Kim, no, it's easy for you to do it. This is natural for you to do it. You are minimizing the importance of what you're doing because it's so easy for you, and it's easy for you because it's your gift. It's your unique talent.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
I thought it was so easy because I thought anybody could do this. And they're all probably rolling their eyes going, well, of course it's fine. Anybody can do this.
Hmm.
And it
Hmm.
took that aha. The aha was me. For me was when people have pointed out, wow, you're really good at that. And I'm like, well, duh, isn't everybody? And they're like, no, not everybody is. And I'm like, oh, you don't
Yeah.
say. I didn't know. So that's how I had the moments of like, oh, I didn't know. I thought everybody could do this. So what was it for you, or what were the things for you that someone pointed out and said, you'd be great at that? Like, what was it? Organization? Like, was it team building? Was it the
Mm.
strategizing? Was it, you know,
I think, I have seen you operate. Not everybody can do what you do. But you and I share this similar experience where people outside of us were seeing things that maybe were implicit skills or maybe were skills we were trying to develop deliberately. I'd answer your question in two ways. One is people noticed in me that I was good at getting opposing points of view to talk to one another. In
I
fact,
did.
I could remember exactly who said that to me.
Ooh.
A dear friend from Georgia,
Hmm.
a guy named Chris White, uh, emeritus professor of pediatrics at Medical College of Georgia.
Great
And
memory.
he said, yeah, shout out to Dr. White, Christopher B. White. Um,
Born and
And,
raised in. Do you have all those other things?
and he's just oh my
Blood
God,
type AB negative.
a guy you want to spend time with. And Chris said, you're really good at getting people to talk to one another. And that was his way, I believe, of saying getting organizations to talk to one another, particularly organizations that have their own self-interests, is a skill that not everybody has.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what it allowed me to do is just take that little seed and think about, well, if I'm good at it, how do I get better at it? And then you start reading Harvard Business Review and watching other people and coming to your faculty development courses. So I've deliberately grown that skill set. The second is sponsorship, and which is so important to the work that we've done in the past and to the work you're doing now. I've had really, really important people sponsor me, and Julia McMillan is one of them. So Julia, one of the most important mentors in my career, she sponsored me for local things at Hopkins, for national positions. I had a period of time where I wasn't associated with the American Board of Pediatrics before taking this job. But prior, in the mid-teens, I was on the board of directors of this organization because Julia was one of the sponsors.
Wow.
And I think that's an important thing to go with and believe in your sponsors and also be grateful to your sponsors.
Yeah. What advice would you give for early mid-career faculty members who are growing their career, growing their field, and want to either develop relationships with sponsors? Is that a proactive kind of a thing? Like we train people to get a team of mentors, get a primary mentor, get a content mentor, get a process mentor, get a promotion mentor. I'm guessing that you didn't seek out a sponsor. I'm guessing that maybe you didn't ask Julia or to sponsor you do something. Rather, people reached out to you. So how do you balance that waltz of being proactive on one hand and asking people to invite you to their places to give talks or invite you to serve on different committees or grant review panels, but also being open to building relationships where people could then offer it to you? How do you navigate that without being a salesperson? Because I find a lot of faculty members, they don't feel comfortable being salesperson and like, hey, I'm Dr. Mike Barone.
Self-promotion, right?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So what advice would you give people who maybe feel like, well, nobody sponsors me. How can I be a Mike Barone? Nobody's coming up to me telling me I'm great at stuff. Any kind of hints or that to help someone?
That's a great question. I am much more, so I still mentor some junior faculty and I interact with a lot of residents and fellows, and I am much more explicit about how they need to seek sponsorship and cultivate sponsorship.
Okay.
But I can't say that I did it in a very organized way myself. The way I did it was probably a little bit more akin to the Thin Little Book of Trust, where I demonstrated that I was competent. I demonstrated that I was dedicated and shared the same values as someone. And so that's sort of the way I went about it, maybe implicitly. I also recognize that, I'm almost a 60-year-old. I'm a white male, and when I was coming up in pediatrics, there were a lot of people who looked like me. It's changed now for the better, and I have benefited from some of that in my career, and I'm very conscious of that. And I have done my best to make sure that I'm part of the sponsorship network for people who have had less opportunity than I have.
That's so important, Mike. Thank you. Thank you for underlining that. I think it's an obligation of all of us, even if you're listening to this and you are just starting out and you're thinking, well, I can't sponsor anybody. I think the lesson to learn here is that we're all being mentored and have opportunity to mentor learners. All have opportunity to sponsor someone, even if you're early career and you see opportunities that aren't a good match for you, but someone right next to you, someone in the suite down the hall from you, or someone in the hallway, we can all sponsor each other. So I think the obligation is to give as much as we'd like to receive. And my instinct is that part of that authenticity, that sharing, that arriving being confident in what you can give, but as you mentioned earlier, that empathy and the humility of recognizing I don't know everything. I don't know. I'm not the keeper of all truth, and I don't know what I don't know. Communicating that in a real, genuine way will open up relationships to you. And what I'm feeling is I think I'm trying to say is transactional versus transformative relationships. And I
Mm.
see that maybe, a common thread is in that organic sponsorship or the more formal structure, the thin book of trust version of, and you're right, it was Charles Feltman, is this authenticity in this being invested in transformative relationships versus transactional? Hey, what can you do for me? Cold and maybe aloof, rather, no, I'm really here authentically. And that kind of opens up, I think, a lot more space for possibilities. And I see that with you, and I feel that with you, even just talking on the Zoom, that your whole vibe, you've always had this energy that is authentic and real. And I think, if anything, a lesson here for people who are starting out or trying to think about transitions in careers is just coming to some place with authenticity and
Oh, 100% agree.
being genuine.
I probably learned that at least in my career path at the bedside. And there was no way to be effective, nor did I want to be any other way other than being authentic at the bedside. And that carried over into other elements. But we all have our place of developing that authenticity. Um, and I'm at a point in my career right now where I'm excited about what I can continue to contribute in the last phase of my career. And also really excited about the next group of people who are smarter and more
Mhm.
savvy and more skilled than I am.
Yeah.
I recently had a conversation with someone who I wanted to sponsor for something. I suggested that this individual who identifies as she should do this role. And the conversation was very tentative. I don't think I can do that. Why did you think of me? And I didn't want to put the individual in a situation that made her uncomfortable, but I really conveyed confidence that I was certain you could do this.
Hmm.
And I would be willing to ride along with you as somebody who can shape the talk you're going to give, shape the presentation, and you receive the gift of being able to give this presentation, or be the one who's delivering it. I would be completely behind the scenes, and that to me, that role is just as exciting as being a contributor on my own.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
So fun. Isn't that just a
it's
charm?
so much fun.
When you're with somebody and they're like, nah. And takes me back to the story of me going, nah, not me. And I'm like, no, when you started talking to me about that science and this epigenomic something something, your eyes just lit up. I don't know what the heck you're
Yeah,
talking. It was a lot of multisyllabic words, but boy, your whole persona changed. And they go, really? And I say,
yeah,
yes. When you just take the time, and what I've always appreciated about you is you never felt to me like you're in a rush. Maybe that's maybe my Friday afternoon kind of thought here is you're never rushing, and that peaceful, calm affect it's so missing in the world today, and certainly in academic health, and I know everywhere.
mhm,
But just to slow down and be with someone, and to hear them, and to feel that vibe of, in your case, the person saying, "I don't know, I don't feel confident about that." You could have very easily have said, "Well, think about it, let me know. Get back to me, email me next Thursday, and let me know what you decided." And then she could have walked out of the room and talked herself completely out of it or spun
yep,
out of it. But no, that to slow down and sit in that space, be comfortable in the discomfort of someone go, I don't know, I don't think so, and say, okay, well, tell me more about that. Have you done something similar in the past, or may I
yeah.
share a story with you? I myself, Mike Barone, I remember someone telling me that I should think about it, and I initially thought no. And let me tell you how that played out for me. That kind of vulnerability
Exactly.
I think opens up. I mean, I think it's just a
Yeah.
beautiful, it is such a charge. I love this part of my career where somebody is sitting across from me and they're getting all woo and excited. And I'm like, yeah, it charges me
Yeah.
up. I couldn't care less about what I'm doing. But when I see somebody else skipping out of here and excited, then I'm like, yep, good day. It was a good day.
And you're a certified coach, so you have a framework for this and
Hmm.
a skill set for this. But in those situations, the one we've been talking about, approaching it with curiosity. Well, what makes you think that you'd be reluctant to do that? And help
Yeah.
me understand a little bit more about that. Well, how would you feel if I helped you with this aspect of it? Would you have enough confidence to do that? Those are great conversations to have. And I would much rather be helping somebody I'm sponsoring give a big talk than, replying to some emails that I get,
Exactly.
although I get really good emails.
I'm sure you do, Dr. Mike Barone. I'm sure you do. So if you had to do it over, if you had a do-over, different path in life, we talked a little bit about this, and I know you have. I love
Mm,
what you said to me earlier is that you think education assessment is the biggest quality improvement lever we can pull, that quality improvement engine. So I know that you are just you live and breathe and sleep education and pediatrics, and that's just part of your lifeblood. But if you had a do-over, you know, what are your thoughts about that, or what a couple pearls and nuggets
mm.
that are coming up for you?
I would take one of two paths.
Oh,
If I had a do-over, I might do exactly the same thing. But let's play out that I had to do something different.
okay.
I'm not a pediatric subspecialist. I'm a generalist, and I think like a generalist. But I always wondered what it would be like to be a pediatric subspecialist and focus on one organ system, a group of disease processes or conditions. Um, I think that would be a really neat career. And if I could hit reset, I'd probably experience that career. And in that case, I may have stayed in clinical practice my entire career.
Right.
The other path I would take is fueled by the fact that I am deeply troubled by the state of pediatric healthcare in the United States. We have really bad children's healthcare outcomes as a very wealthy country. There are great disparities in care. Children's healthcare is woefully underfunded versus adult care when you just look at Medicaid, Medicaid parity. And I might have gone into politics because the only way that really changes is at the federal level or at the state level. My colleagues in pediatrics do great work every day in a system that's largely broken for children because we underinvest as a country in children. And I might decide, you know what, the way to really fix this is to impact it or influence it at the state or federal level.
I'd vote for you. I'll work on your campaign.
Yeah, I'd have imposter syndrome for that. I'm really happy in this job. I work in this job at the pleasure of the board of directors. So I have a great group of people who I report to. Really a wonderful, wonderful board. And yeah, I can see great things coming out of the American Board of Pediatrics healthcare in the next 10 years, and I'm really excited to be here.
Thank the Lord that you are there. And I just want to remind you, Dr. Mike Barone, what that sponsor mentor said of you years ago, that you have an uncanny ability to get people on opposite sides to talk to each other. That sounds like the perfect thing to be in government, of getting people on opposite sides of the table to talk to each other. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Don't have imposter syndrome, President Mike Barone.
Yeah. What I see on the news right now, I think I'd like to stay in my own little pediatric world.
Okay, all right. Well, that's exactly where we need you.
Yeah.
Dr. Mike Barone, you are wonderful. Thank you so much for all this wealth of wisdom, for being on the Faculty Factory podcast. If you want to be in the podcast, just email me, go to the website, facultyfactory.org, and get a hold of Dr. Mike Barone at the American Board of Pediatrics and watch all that he's doing there. Thank you, a board of directors, for hiring this guy and keeping him with you. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Take care.
Hi, Faculty Factory friends. It's Kim Skorupski here. Just a quick commercial for our upcoming Faculty Leadership Collaborative Mid-Career Boot Camp. We're hot off the 3-day Faculty Leadership Collaborative Early Career Boot Camp, where we had about 72 assistant professors from around the country and the world. Speakers included Doctors Susan Chubinskaya, Nutan Vaidya, Valerie Williams, Bob Tillman, Karma Fouché, Rachel Levine, Hannah Lundberg, Jennifer Haythornthwaite, Susan Matulevicius, Sonali Kandawal, and Kathleen Gamilla Crudo, Josh Polanski, and me. It was so awesome. Well, the 3-day mid-career boot camp for associate professors is April 9th to 11th, 2025, 2 to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, all via Zoom. The topics for the mid-career boot camp will include Leadership Presence and Self-Management by Joe Losi at Pitt, Communicating with Emotional Intelligence with Alice Fornari from Hofstra, Leading Organizational Change with Susan Chubinskaya right here at University of Texas Medical Branch, Conflict Management and Mediation with Dave Usum from Hopkins, Strategic Thinking, Planning, and Negotiating with Rejma Jagzi from Emory, Building and Managing Teams and Projects with Wendy Bennett from Hopkins and Darpan Patel from the University of Texas Medical Branch, Finances and Funds Flow with Vin Pellegrini from Dartmouth, and Creating a Leadership Future, Preparing for Transitions with Archana Chatterjee from Rosalind Franklin. We're also going to have a panel of recently promoted professors who will share their journeys. You'll get 9 contact hours of CME, CNE, and CLS continuing education credits. You've got a curated resource guide, lots of networking opportunities. We have a half hour before, half hour after each day's events for just more community building and networking and Q&A. So go to the facultyfactory.org website. That's facultyfactory.org website. You'll find the link right there on the first page to sign up and share it with your colleagues and friends. Thanks for tuning in to the Faculty Factory podcast. We are a faculty development community sharing tools to build academic leaders in healthcare. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast? Please visit facultyfactory.org/contact and send me a message there. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Office of Faculty Affairs at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas.